welcome everyone to episode 4 of Honestly Bilal. Today I have another medical student with me today. I'm with Melissa Yuan. This is a show where we talk about with med students who are interested in ophthalmology, also with current ophthalmologists in the field, trying to hear their stories of how they got where they are so we can get there too and learn from each other. So I'm really excited to be back today with you guys because it's been a crazy week for me. I've been on vascular surgery, so it's been case after case and pretty intense stuff, a lot of standing. So it's nice to sit down and have a chat with somebody who I've never met before, but I've interacted with on Twitter and social media. So I'm really excited to be here. So welcome, Melissa.
Thanks for having me, Bilal.
Yeah, absolutely. So but it's really cool to be with you. Good to see that, you're taking initiative to try to meet more people too. I think it's really cool that we have this opportunity, especially with Zoom. Like, I never used Zoom before this whole pandemic. So for me, it's been nice to kind of like get situated with something virtual like this and feel comfortable. So I don't know about you if you feel the same way.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
We have all those interviews coming up that'll all be like this. So this
There
is perfect practice.
Very fun. So, just want to get to know you. We've never met. We've never actually spoken to each other. Last night I called you because we had to just kind of reschedule something. But besides that, we've never met face to face or talked to each other in a setting like this. So it's been nice to relax and kind of get to make more friends because, like I talked about with Arjun too, from the previous interview, that without the interview trail, it's kind of hard to really get that social aspect of getting to meet people and feeling comfortable and being like, well, I might have friends in this field I want to go into someday. So it's really cool to have that because you never know someday if you're a specialist in something, I might call you like, hey, Melissa, it's good to hear from you. I really need help with something. I've never figured this situation out. So I think it's cool to think in those terms, like down the road, like where we can think back on this maybe someday and be like, wow, it's really crazy how we were just kids on a podcast or video channel and now here we are. So I don't know. I like to think about it like that. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's the
I
idea.
love that. We're all going to be colleagues.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we're all getting to know each other.
Yeah, the world's more interconnected now than ever, so you never know. So kind of tell everybody where you grew up and where you're from, if you don't mind.
I am from Sharon, Massachusetts, which is a little town. It's near Foxborough, which is where the Patriots play, and almost an hour outside of Boston.
Okay. And speaking of Boston, you go to Harvard for undergrad, and you're from originally, and you kind of told me about this a little earlier, but you're from where you grew up. It's a small town, but it's not suburban because you also grew up with some animals, right? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So we had a big enough backyard that my parents had 35 chickens and honeybees. We had a couple of hives of them before they got decimated by the honeybee illness. And then we had rabbits and dogs and turtles and the pig. The pig is named Cheerio.
Yeah, that's the thing. I saw that in your bio and I was like, I need to hear about Cheerio. So Cheerio must be your prize pig, your favorite. Is that right?
He's pretty great.
Okay.
He's great.
Most people have a dog. You have Cheerio.
We had a dog too. The dog is wonderful.
Okay.
They're wonderful in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. So what was it like growing up? Were you comfortable with the animals or were you like very like timid around them? Like what was your relationship with the animals when you were growing up?
I have always loved animals. I actually begged for that dog for years before we got him. And I still love animals, but it's a little different in New York City.
Yeah.
So I fostered some dogs earlier in med school. I ended up adopting one of them. So now I'm a dog mom too, dog of my own.
You're from a small place in Massachusetts. You went to Harvard, then you go to Cornell in the city. How was that transition? Was it like comfortable for you, or was it like was it strange going from like that, that environment? It's obviously like a high academic institution at Harvard, and Cornell's a great school too. But like just going from Massachusetts to New York City, Boston to New York, what was that like?
It was a huge transition for me. I had never lived in a big city before. It's a different culture. People move faster. They talk faster. They're a little bit more rude. I had to learn how to order a bagel really quickly because, I was too slow at first. But I couldn't be happier with coming here to train. I think it's the best place possible with so many people and so many patients and just all the resources you could possibly ask for.
I feel like that diversity too of this, like not only in terms of cultures, but also like the ways of life and also the boroughs. Like I've never been to New York City. I've been fascinated by New York City. I've always like wanted to know what it's like to live there or visit, number one, but then also to live there and to do something like serious, like med school or any form of training in a city like that. It must be, so unique and rigorous, but also so exciting and fun because I feel like you never really know what's coming. I feel like, which is really cool. But I think it takes a special kind of person also to be able to study and like have a focus in a place like that where, med school is discipline. Med school is like, you have to have a structure, and a city like that seems to just have like, the city never sleeps. It's kind of crazy to have that structure. So I mean, in Toledo, we don't have that problem. There's not a lot to do. So we don't have the New York City issue, but I think it's interesting because me and my friends talk about that. Like, what is it like to go to med school in Miami or New York City where there's like constantly something going on, and which is kind of crazy, but it's cool to hear those perspectives too, because I don't know what that's like, and that's something I wanted to know more about. But yeah, so okay, so you're in your fourth year. You were talking to me earlier about how before COVID you were doing like a research sort of initiative at Cornell. Just talk about that a little bit. It sounds really cool.
For sure. So I was really lucky that when COVID hit, I had already finished my clerkships. So we finished them between like MS 2.5 and MS 3.5. And then I took step one and I started my research block, which is 6 months of dedicated time for research.
Okay.
So I was in a gene therapy lab at Cornell with a neurosurgeon we have here. And I was all excited about my project, which is supposed to be on a gene therapy for Alzheimer's disease. And we were starting to make it, and we had just started to validate the vector, and we were going to start to test it in animals when COVID shut down the lab. So I've had to change the project around a little bit. Luckily, I've been back in the lab since late May, so we've been back at it. It's a new project now. It's on intraarterial injection of the gene therapy with focused ultrasound opening of the blood-brain barrier. It's a different way of drug delivery, basically. It's a little bit more simple. So hopefully I can get it done.
Super simple. Yeah, the most simple thing I've ever heard, of course. No, yeah, you made it sound really easy, but it's cool. I mean, it's nice that you were able to adjust, especially in a time where we're all making adjustments, because it's kind of, it's scary to be in the middle of something that you were really putting a lot of effort in, obviously, and then it kind of just, everybody's dealing with kind of like figuring out how to recalibrate. So I'm glad to see that you figure out something else, though. That's good. That's good to hear. I wish I could have that sort of expertise in something. So you have to teach me a little bit more about the blood-brain barrier and all that stuff. So obviously, you're interested in ophthalmology. That's how we got to know each other. You're going to be applying ophthalmology this upcoming fall. Kind of tell everybody what drew you into ophthalmology. What's your story with how you got interested in it, and talk about that a little bit.
For sure. So I came to medical school pretty sure I was going to be a neurosurgeon, actually.
Okay. That makes sense with the research. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I had studied neurobiology in undergrad. I love the brain. I did research on the brain, and then I got to med school, and I still thought I was going to be a neurosurgeon. I started doing research in this lab in my first year, and I shadowed neurosurgeons, and I was lucky to rotate through neurosurgery pretty early in my clinical year, and I thought it was awesome. I thought it was great. The community and the research and the surgeries were really, really amazing.
Yeah.
But then as my clinical year went on, I realized that I also really like primary care, and getting to know my patients over years and years, and making these relationships with people, and clinic. I really like clinic, and that's not very common of a neurosurgeon. And I realized basically that my personality is a better fit for something where I can have outpatient longitudinal care. But also I couldn't stand the thought of giving up surgery, especially microsurgery.
Right.
So I was really lucky that I rotated through ophthalmology during my primary care rotation, actually, which goes to show you what New York City is like in terms of primary care. And I realized this was it. Everyone was so happy. The patients were happy.
Yeah.
They loved their ophthalmologist. That's something I loved about it. Everyone told me, this is my favorite doctor right here. This is the best. And I saw surgery. I shadowed a retina surgeon actually for the first time in the OR. And it was so amazing. I couldn't believe that when you look through the pupil, you're like looking through the pupil to see the back of the eye. I still can't get over how cool that is. And so that's when I knew that the relationships you build with patients, the surgeries, the research also, gene therapy is very active in especially the retinal world, but also in the rest of ophthalmology. And I knew that this was it.
No, that's crazy. So it's funny because now this is the second. So you're my second student interview, and you're the second person who went from having a specialty that they were really interested in, and then switching to ophthalmology.
Arjun was ortho, right?
Ortho, yeah, he was ortho.
That's right.
He switched to ophthalmology. So I told him, I joked with him, he was bones to eyes, and now you're brains to eyes.
Right, a little closer.
Yeah, a little closer. Yours makes a little more, it continues on. So that's really interesting. So you actually it's not like you really left neuro in a way either, because the retina is obviously nervous tissue, and it still ties in. So I feel like maybe that experience was still, in a way, it's continuing your passion for neuroscience, right? So I feel like you're, and with gene therapy and stuff too, you're still implementing stuff that you are passionate about, but just reintroducing into a different avenue. So I guess it works out.
Yeah, yeah. One of my early ophtho mentors is a retina surgeon here, Dr. Keish, and he actually wanted to be a neurosurgeon.
Oh,
Took a year
interesting.
off and did all that research, and then changed his mind also. And now he's in
Hmm.
retina. And he claims it's basically the same thing but better.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that actually really helped me to hear that
Yeah.
perspective.
And identifying with somebody who kind of made you feel more confident in that decision.
Right, that I wasn't crazy, for
Yeah,
making the
yeah, for
switch.
sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that third year really does, or at least I guess at least our clinical years, because I guess
Hmm.
your school does a little differently. But I think the clinical years can kind of make you think again and then really it makes you kind of question, like, what do I really like as a person in terms of my personality, in terms of what works for me, what is natural for me, what makes me feel like I'm being true to myself, and being in a place where I feel like, in a field at least, or want to be part of a field that makes me feel like this is not only a place I fit, but I can actually contribute to. So, you're doing your research and trying to find advances in gene therapy and stuff like that. I think is super cool. And to me, the retina is cool also for that reason, because there is so many novel advances for different stuff like that. And I think it's cool that you started it. And I think it's really cool you have a great mentor too, who has a story that you relate to. I think that's how you form a really good relationship, with each other. And you actually have a personal relationship where you can confide in them, you know, your conflicts of, like, how do I feel about this path or this path? And I think it's important to seek that resource. So
Hmm.
that's great. So would you consider him your biggest mentor? Do you have other mentors you like, who you along the way have been helpful for you outside of ophthalmology, just in life too?
Yeah, I. So when we learned ophthalmology, like we had 2 days on it during our neuro
Yeah.
preclinical unit, there was a fellow who came and taught us, and I remember thinking, "Wow, she is so nice, just so happy, and like clearly loves her job." But I wasn't interested in ophthalmology at the time. But she was the first person I ran into when I was actually in the clinic looking for someone else I was meeting with that day, and she remembered me from class, and she welcomed me into neuro op clinic,
Wow.
and it was she showed me just how welcoming the ophthalmology community is, which I think you and I have seen over and over again on
Yeah,
Twitter now and social
absolutely.
media. But she was the first who showed me that. And I definitely consider her one of my biggest cheerleaders
Mhm.
in ophthalmology.
That's great. Okay, so do you still keep in touch? Are you still in contact with her and everything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she left. She was an attending. She after her fellowship, she joined our staff for a bit, but then she went back to Oklahoma, where she's
Okay.
from.
Okay.
And so I've been texting her, trying to make sure she's okay with all. She texted me when COVID started and was such a
Right.
big deal in New York, and now I'm worried about her in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Right.
Funny how that is.
I know. I mean, New York City, and especially you were in the heat of it. Like, where did you go back home to Massachusetts when it kind of picked up?
Mm-mm.
You stayed in the
I
city.
stayed, yeah, because I was
Wow.
unreasonably hopeful I would be back in the lab. And then I also was able to join some volunteering things,
That's
making
awesome.
masks, delivering food, that
That's
kind of
awesome.
simple stuff. So it felt like I was being helpful, even though I'm sure
Yeah.
it wasn't just, I wasn't medical.
No, I
But
mean, that's the thing, is like you find a way to still be, you put your skills aside to find out a way to help out, and that's really cool.
right,
Because especially, I mean, New York City just was looking for anyone. I mean, they were looking for just somebody, bodies who could do something,
right.
especially in the medical field. So that's really creative, and it takes a lot of effort to put yourself out there in situations like that. And so I applaud you on that. That's really cool. I'm sure you're gonna look back someday too, because I think we're gonna look back in history and remember this period so, like, distinctly, because it was such a transformative time.
Mhm.
So I think it's gonna be interesting, when your family down the road, or if you ever have kids or grandkids or whatever, they'll ask, what did you do? What was that period like in time? Like, did you do anything? And you can be proud that you said, yeah, actually, I was a med student and I stopped my research just to start volunteering. I think those kind of stories have a lot of merit, and they really, I think, when you think about what it's going to sound like when you're older and reflecting back on this time, as sad and tragic as it's been for people, to do something positive like that, it'll hopefully inspire people down the road too, who need it. Because more will come. Unfortunately, I think that we can't predict. I don't know enough about infectious disease or epidemiology to talk about pandemics confidently, but I think it's good that we can figure out what we can do now in case, down the road there's a similar situation. So be prepared. Yeah.
Mhm.
So then you talked about your mentors and stuff and medical school so far at Cornell. Have you had a favorite, just like absolute best experience in med school that you've just been super, like what was your absolute favorite moment of med school for you?
So this is going to sound so cliche, but I loved all of my clinical years so much.
Okay.
I think I loved that um, with every rotation, it was just a quick bite of this specialty, and you could really pretend that you were in that specialty and see yourself there. And it was very open-ended. I, saw myself as a pediatrician, as an OB-GYN,
Yeah.
um, as a primary care physician, and it's a kind of openness we'll never have again, I think. And that was really fun for me. People were always a little confused why I was so happy during clinical year, but it was this unending possibilities was the best part of med school for me.
Yeah. So you had an open mind to seeing yourself being in every position to kind of be like, what can I see myself fit in this field in a way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to take clinical year with that kind of attitude,
Yeah.
just to make the most of it, because you
For
never
sure.
know.
For
And
sure.
I didn't know that I would be interested in ophthalmology.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, even if you may not be interested in pediatrics or OBGYN for practicing, but you need knowledge is knowledge, and it's never useless, and everything ties in at some point or another. I think, or at least I want to believe. So I think it's an important, crucial part. So that's good. You like third year, and is it? Explain to me one more time. Is it third year that you guys do your clinical rotations, or is it second year? I'm just kind of trying to figure out the timeline here.
Yeah, it was always confusing to the residents too.
Yeah, I
So
figured.
you're a second year. So we start our clinicals a year and a half into med school.
Wow,
So
that is
yeah,
really soon.
it was soon. I felt like I didn't know anything because we didn't take step one until after. So I really felt like I had
Yeah,
no knowledge base.
sure.
But it shows you how much you're capable of at some
Mhm.
point, that you're able to just go in
Absolutely.
there and learn on the fly.
Yeah.
And then we do that for one full year. So from MS2, halfway through MS2 to halfway through MS3.
Okay, got it. So I think there's a couple of schools that do that too, especially in the
Yeah.
Northeast. I figure like, in the Midwest, we don't do that, but I think that's more of a trend that a lot of places are doing. And I think it's actually really interesting now because with COVID and the entire step one situation where, tests are being pushed back and stuff like that. I was rotating this week with a third year, or with a rising third year while I'm a rising fourth year. And she was telling me how she hasn't taken step one yet, and it's really hard to balance like studying for rotations and shelves with step. And
Yeah.
I wanted to find some advice to give her. I couldn't, but do you have any advice for people who are out there who are in the similar situation? Like, because I know there's some M2s who are rising M3s who haven't taken step one yet, and they're going to start rotations. So what is your advice to how to balance
Sure.
all that and try to be proactive with studying? Do you have any?
I think this happened to, maybe it was SUNY Downstate also, that they normally do 2 full years clinical year and then no, and then step and then clinical year,
Okay.
but they've had to switch it around to do step after. So they
Yeah.
wanted some advice. And one of my good friends is at Dartmouth, and she's going to have the same problem where she has to take step one halfway through MS3 during rotations. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
for me, it was helpful to know that what you're learning on rotations actually does help.
Hmm.
Um, Being able to learn from your patients makes it stick so much better. I didn't have to study, for example, chemotherapy drugs basically for step one, because I rotated through Memorial Sloan Kettering for my medicine clerkship. And
Oh
so it
wow.
was all kind of in there, which was
Yeah.
surprising to me actually, that it was still in there.
Right. Right.
So I told her not to worry as much as about that, and to really immerse herself in her rotations while she was
Sure.
there. And then I think they still get some dedicated time. And I personally thought that 6 weeks was more than enough time
Okay.
to go through everything again.
Got it. So I'll share that with my med student on Monday because I think I feel bad because so we have to split up the cases every day, and I'm trying to get
Mhm.
for the early morning ones. So I'm like,
That's
look, I'll see
sweet.
you in the afternoon so you can get out here. You gotta study. Like
Right.
I feel
Right.
anxious for her. I'm like, you need to go. Like get out. Go study.
Go.
Don't
Yeah.
stay till 6 p.m. Please. You don't need to be. But
That's
it,
so
it's
tough.
it's a challenge, and I really feel for them.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully they find some solution to making. I don't know. I have no idea what it's like to be on that end. I don't know what it's like to be on the end where people who assess their step one scores is like. So I just hope that they figure it out in a way that's conducive and sustainable for their health and their
Right.
power through. So that's
It'll
important.
be pass fail soon enough, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So things are changing as it is. So
mm-hmm.
so then okay. So that was kind of a bleak topic. I want to move on and want to think about that for those kids. But
Right.
you told me something really interesting that you actually are fluent in Spanish and that you went to Spain. And tell us about that. You were living in Madrid. Like, what was that like? Tell us. I want to know as much as you want to share.
That it was the best year ever,
Uh-huh.
besides clinical year.
Sure.
Um, so I studied Spanish starting at Harvard. So when I was 18 years old was the first time I learned the language, which is way past that critical period for when you're
Yeah.
supposed to
Okay. Whatever.
easily pick up languages.
Mhm.
And I knew it would be useful, but I didn't realize how much I was going to love learning the language.
Yeah.
And I went to Spain for the first time when I was a sophomore in college
Okay.
for a summer. And I did research on fear conditioning in humans using MEG to record the neural responses to that.
Okay.
And then I loved that research so much, I was completely determined to go back. And so
Uh-huh.
I got a fellowship from Harvard to go for a year after I graduated. And that's what I did. I went back to the same lab, which was the Centro de Técnica Biomédica in Madrid. It's a big center for like biomedical engineering type stuff, and we were the Neuroscience Center.
Okay.
And I went back and I finished that project on fear conditioning in humans and what the neural networks are that lie behind it.
Mm.
And I loved living in Spain. It was completely different.
Yeah.
As you know, I was from Massachusetts. I had always lived in Massachusetts. So
Sure.
I was finally somewhere completely new. I had to learn how to be a little bit more relaxed than a Northeasterner
Sure.
because life is quite different in Spain. I learned how to eat dinner at 9 p.m.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And I really was able to practice my Spanish, which has been so useful
Mm.
for patient care
Yeah.
and being able to build relationships with patients too.
Absolutely. Especially in your city where you have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
population who speak Spanish fluently and they don't know. I mean, some people don't speak English at all. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
actually really crucial. I'm sure that you've been very useful to people whose teams you've been on and stuff to have that skill.
Sometimes it was the most useful thing I did.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really cool. I think it's a really cool story too because you experienced another culture for a full year,
Mm-hmm.
and I advocate for that. I feel like I would love an experience like that just to figure out how people practice their daily life and stuff in a country like that, which has a very different attitude. So yeah, I actually have teammates. I played tennis in college. I don't know if you're in another interview.
Yeah.
And some of my best friends who I still keep in touch with to this day are from Spain. So
Okay.
I actually visited them in Madrid, and I love Madrid. It was an awesome city. I mean, it was so
Great
fun.
city.
I mean, it's just it's such a cool culture. To me, I don't know if have you been to Barcelona too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know how you feel. I like Madrid more. I just feel like Barcelona is a little bit too touristy.
Music to my ears, but wow, that's exactly what
I'm
I think.
serious. I really do
Yeah,
think that
that's
too, and I
really
feel
what I
like
think.
Madrid has its own like personality, and it's very like
Mm-hmm.
if I want to experience Spain, I feel like Madrid really gave me what it's like to be a Spanish person and feel like what
Right.
their daily life is like, and and it is totally like they eat paella, they have dinner
Right.
at 9 p.m. They do their
Mm-hmm.
thing. So looking forward to hopefully going back someday. You never know, but
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. When the EU opens their borders to us again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really cool. I mean, I can't imagine living there for a year, so I feel like it's probably almost like another home to you. I mean, you must know it really well,
I
Madrid.
love going back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So how many times
I
have you
miss
been
it.
now? Have you been back a couple times or what?
Yeah, I try to go back at least a couple of times a year. I haven't been in a while now because of
Sure.
COVID. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
waiting. Yeah.
Okay, a couple times a year. You must have made friends there who you keep in touch with and who you're still
Hmm.
talking to and everything.
Yeah, and it feels like going home now.
Yeah,
It's a place that I know.
yeah. That's the crazy thing too about like these friendships that you make when, we get busy in med school and it's not always as easy to keep in touch with people.
Hmm.
But there's some friendships you have from before med school or even during or whatever that when you don't talk to that person for a while, but you do talk again, it just picks up where you left off. Like nothing ever
Hmm.
changed, and I think those are really special friendships that hopefully we hold on to going forward also, because you need that to maintain that you are a person who
Right.
who's had experiences and you met people along the way who really shaped you too. So very cool. So and then talk about a little about your hobbies. What do you do for fun? What are your interests? Like, who's Melissa the person?
Well, we mentioned that I love animals, so
Good.
we talked about my fostering dogs and all
Yes.
that stuff. I walked dogs for WAG a lot during first year. It was how I
Oh,
got my steps in. That was fun.
Yeah.
It's and I got to go into a lot of really great houses in New York too, because you go in to pick up the dog.
Oh,
It
I bet.
was crazy.
But, yeah.
I love languages, but we also talked about that.
Yeah.
And let's see, I actually played tennis growing up too,
You
which is so
did?
funny. Yeah, I played the
Got more tennis
USTA
players.
tournaments and all that good
No
stuff.
way.
Yeah,
There you go.
I mean, we're not that good up in the Northeast, is always what I heard compared to the
No,
rest of the
hey,
country.
hey, it's all relative, right? It's just about having fun.
Yeah, and it's so
That's fun.
fun. But then
Okay.
I thought I would branch out a little when I got to college because I'd only ever played tennis. I had never done another sport. So I
Sure.
tried out some IM rowing, which is
Oh,
fun. I also wasn't
wow.
that great at that, but it was
Yeah.
really fun. I took up Tough Mudder races with a good friend of mine from college.
Oh,
And those are really fun because they're collaborative. There's
yeah.
no timing, and
Right.
um, you're literally just running through mud and
Yeah.
obstacles for 13 miles, which was great. And
Yeah.
my most recent thing is I've taken up running. It's more to show myself that I can do it, because I
Yeah.
was the slowest runner in my third grade class in the mile.
Okay. You're
So
growing.
I
You're growing.
and I finished a half marathon last March. So that
Congrats.
was, thank you. It was
Yeah.
just to show myself that I'm capable
Yeah.
of doing more than I thought I was.
For sure. That's such a confidence booster too, just to get that under your belt. But all right, if I can do this, why not do a full? So are you gonna do a full at some point? Are you thinking about it, considering, or not yet?
Thinking about it,
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, that's
The
a
second
big
half is
jump.
still a big thing. It's a big jump.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. That's fair. Well, I mean, it's been really fun having you. I'm trying to do one new thing in my show now, where I'm doing a fun question. So, if you could have one dinner guest for an evening, whether they're alive or no longer alive, who would it be, and what would you want to talk about with them?
So someone I've always thought was amazing is Santiago Ramon y Cajal, the Spanish neuroscientist who elucidated what a neuron was,
Oh,
because I don't know how he thought of it, because everyone before him had thought that the brain was a giant conglomerate of, I don't know what, of just like fibers that were intertwined. And he somehow realized that they were different, separate neurons from each other that were signaling to each other. And I want to know, how does one's mind make that jump from what everyone else has always known and learned? I guess I'm always interested in learning how people are innovative and creative, and
yeah,
how those brilliant minds work.
right. Or what just clicked for them to be like, wait,
Exactly.
this is what it is, and I'm convinced, and I know it sounds crazy, but I think this is what it is.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Good guess. Good choice. I like that answer. I had no idea who that was before you said the name. So I learned something from you. So that's the point of the show. Well, Melissa, it was great to have you. Thanks for joining me today. You're always welcome to come back. I'm looking forward to see what happens with you in your career this year, and seeing what your trajectory is. So where can people find you on Twitter if they want to network with you or get to follow you? What's your handle on Twitter?
Or I'm at _ Melissa Yuan, Yuan. It's my name.
Awesome. And again, I'm Bilal. I'm the host of Honestly Bilal. You can find me on Twitter at Bilal_1712, or on Instagram at Honestly Bilal. Thanks, guys, for joining. We have a couple more interviews this week, or this weekend, coming up with Dr. Steinman and Angie as well. So looking forward to those, and we'll see you then. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, Bilal.
Absolutely.